Last month, I lost 7 pounds and 3.5% body fat, all while maintaining my power on the bike, and I wanna show you exactly how I did it. Now, I have this beautiful blackboard right here, but it's kind of hard to read with all the glare, so what I did was write everything on this whiteboard so it'd be a little bit more clear. But most importantly, these are kind of my notes to make sure I don't miss any details for you guys. And with that being said, thanks for watching, Dialed Fam. Let's dive into this. What's up, Dialed Fam? It's Coach Derek here, and I'm really excited to break down all of this information for you because, as you can see, there's a lot of it, and I wanted to take my time to do it right and make sure that you can apply it yourself in a really clear, concise way. And I want you to know that there's more information about this in detail on the website. Things like even finding our basal metabolic rate, which we'll go over first, are on a blog post on dialedhealth.com where you can go and use a calculator. There's links to everything. And if you're a member, you even can do the Dialed Health Shred, which is almost exactly this protocol. There's a full article on there that you have to be a member to access, but again, it has all of this and more information about really like how to implement this. So keep that in mind as we go forward, but we'll start out with the basal metabolic rate. So basal metabolic rate is the amount of calories your body burns at rest. Now, this is if you are completely almost bedridden. It's just the amount of energy it takes your body to function and do all the subconscious things that you do, like breathing and whatever, whatever else, your heart pumping, all those things happening. Now, when you do your BMR calculator, you'll plug in information about your gender, your height, your weight, all of that, and then your age, and it'll pop out your number. Now, if you have a body fat scanner like the InBody machine that I used for this, which I'll show you right here. This right here is the InBody machine I was talking about. Kind of not a dialed setup right there because I had to move a file cabinet. Anyways, this is the machine that I step on. You hold these handles and it prints out your InBody sheet. I have all my InBody sheets that have been up here for myself to look at, and you can see basically like all the information that I was telling you guys about or will tell you guys about, including total weight, muscle mass, body fat percentage, and then even segments it out and you can see your results over time. Pretty cool. Then it can give you some clear information and really take into account your muscle mass, which has a lot to do with the amount of calories you burn at rest. But honestly, if you use the equation versus the InBody, I've compared them back and forth, multiple clients myself, and the numbers are always within like 50 to 100 calories, so it's pretty dang close. Now, you're gonna get that number, and mine is 1,723 calories. But again, that's only the amount of calories that you burn subconsciously, really, with your body just like breathing. So for you to, get out of bed, brush your teeth, use the restroom, eat breakfast, digest food, like do all of these things, you're going to want to bump that number up because it's going to be a more accurate representation of actually how many calories you need to function at a minimum throughout your day. And this is like, you just living your life. So there's a range I like to recommend for people. It's 1.1 to 1.3. So depending on your activity level, you're gonna multiply your basal metabolic rate by 1.1 or 1.3. I used 1.2 because I think honestly, outside of my workouts, my life is like right in between like very active and not very active. So I picked that middle number. Now 1.3 would give you more calories. I think I did the equation and it came out to like another 150 calories or so. So it's not extreme, but it will represent you having a more active job versus having more of a desk job. For me, I'm kind of on and off my feet throughout the day at work, but at home I have toddlers. I have a toddler and 2 infants, so it's really busy. And that's why I gave myself the 1.2. So when I get that number, it is 2,067 calories. Now, the thing I'd recommend right off the bat is round it. So I rounded it down just because I like to torture myself, and I went to 2,000 calories flat, and that was kind of like my baseline. Going to a solid number like that, just by the 100, in my opinion, you can do 50. It's just easier to do the math. I mean, that's pretty much all you're doing. You're keeping things simple, and because sometimes, the complexity can really overwhelm you. But I will say it's not as essential if you're focused on macros, but it's something I chose to do to try and, make things a little bit easier. So I knew active BMR was just over 2,000. Now, the next number you need to find after your total active BMR, the calories you're gonna need, is your protein goal. I recommend that you eat 0.8 to 1.1 grams per pound of body weight as your protein goal. And for me, that's right at 165. That's like just between that's like 1.1. My weight at the start of this was 159 pounds. So going to 165 put me on the higher end of protein. But remember, I remind people, because I could rant about protein all day. You don't just eat protein for muscle repair and recovery. That is not the only thing you eat protein for. When you are in a fat loss dieting period, you're in a deficit, protein, not only does it speed up your metabolism because your body has to digest the food, it takes a little bit more energy, but it fills you up. It makes you feel satiated. When you're genuinely hungry for a prolonged period of time, which you will be, I would expect to be, you're gonna want that full feeling in your stomach, and that alone is a great reason to eat higher protein. Now, I will say, there are people who have noticed issues with kidneys, who have done blood work and are very in tune with their body that way. And you could be more of a person that just feels better eating more towards 0.8. I will say, if you're tracking your food for the first time, it's very likely you have not been eating enough protein. That's what we see with the majority of people, even athletes. They'll find out, oh, maybe they're eating a lot of fat and not as much protein as they thought. So I would, start as close to what you're doing currently. Just keep it within this range. Now, because I've been through this process a few times, I know that the more protein I can eat, the faster I'm gonna lose body fat and the more full I'm gonna feel. So that's why I personally went with that higher number. Now, after that, when you're finding your carbs and your fat, I think it's important to eat more of a high carb diet and keeping that range within like 45-ish%. So you can see this little pie chart here. This is my macro pie chart where carbohydrates are represented 45% of my diet. Protein is 30% of my diet. That's that 165 grams. And then fat is 25% of my diet, which is 61 grams. So 248 grams of carbs. Basically, like, what I have to say here is it's a very good example of just moderate eating. I will say, like, I am on a lower fat diet because fat is the lowest part of my diet. But when you look at actually how many grams of fat I'm eating per day and the amount of calories coming from fat, this isn't like someone who's trying to avoid fat. It's just, I bring these things up because there's so many triggering words and there's so many things that set people off nowadays where it's like, oh, but you need healthy fat to function. And I'm like, yeah, I'm eating fat. Like, I've actually taken my fat below 20% before, and that's when I actually notice it disrupts my digestive tract. Bowel movements aren't as frequent or, ideal, I guess, as the most mature way to say that. So, there's a point where, yeah, it does make a difference, but just remember, like, people will hear you say diet and they'll freak out. They'll hear you say, I eat lower fat, and freak out. They'll hear you say, oh, I'm gonna drop my carbs and up my protein. They'll be like, you're not gonna have enough energy on the bike. But it's like, calm down. Like, I'm eating 248 grams of carbs a day. Like, it's not like I'm on a low carb diet. And I wanna compare these, by the way. So this is like very much standard eating. There are bodybuilders who are eating, like my size, eating like over 200 grams of protein per day and eating even less fat, eating even less carbs. So this is a very moderate example of someone who's conscious about what they're taking in, especially as an athlete. Now, the thing that really changes is your workouts, where the biggest note I put right here is add back calories from your workouts. That is hitting your protein goal is how you're gonna maintain the majority of your muscle mass, if not all of it. Adding back your calories from workout is essential if you want to perform. And the reason tracking is so helpful for cyclists in particular is because you burn so many calories on the bike. If you're just kind of winging it and you don't know, you need to feel a little hungry at the end of the day, but you also need to fuel the workout. It's so hard to intuitively decide how much food that is. I don't care how in tune you are with your body. I've been a trainer for almost 10 years. I'm extremely in tune with my body, but until I understood these numbers and could compare those things, I never could get that close. And getting close is what's going to help you keep your performance high, because you'll eat as much as you can whilst maintaining the deficit that you want, opposed to being in a deficit but going too deep into your deficit, which is where people lose so much of their energy, and it just kind of snowballs and snowballs and snowballs until they freak out and say, I can never diet because I can't ride because I have no energy. Don't let that be you. And also, when you do track your food and you know you're getting close to these numbers, When you're drinking Cokes on the bike and you're eating Sour Patch Kids or gels or some super high carb drink mix, you can actually enjoy it knowing that you need all of it. You literally need all of it to perform. And I think that's very empowering. And it's also like, it's like the discipline equals freedom saying, you know, you're disciplined about tracking your food. So then you have the freedom to enjoy these foods that you wouldn't think you could eat if you are trying to lose body fat. All right. So all these numbers take into account, I know just over 2,000 calories is my active BMR. When I jumped into this, I was not eating close to these numbers. I don't want to say not close, but my weight was steadily creeping up over the year, having twins, all these excuses. So I actually started at 2,200 calories to ease into the diet. Now, this was September 29th. I was at 159 pounds and I was 13.2% body fat. Now, I did that to ease in because I know the pain of what 2,000 calories feels like at my baseline, and it's actual pain. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna ease into it and I'm gonna let my stomach shrink a little bit because that will happen. I'm gonna let some of the bloat go away, start to feel some of the results, and then I'm gonna drop it to 2,000 calories after that. I expected to do a full week, 7 days at 2,200. But honestly, once I got to my 5th day, I could tell that my stomach shrank. I could tell I dropped a lot of bloat. My body was kind of detoxing and I just felt ready to, crank up the intensity a little bit, if you will, for the diet. So I dropped it to 2,000 calories after 5 days. Now, because I dropped my calories and my total caloric intake was lowered, it means my macro numbers also needed to lower. Now, at the same macro ratio, which is 30% protein, 45% fat, of course I messed that up. At the same macro ratio, 30% protein, 25% fat, and 45% carb, and lower calories, my numbers went to 150 grams of protein, 255 grams of carbs, and 55 grams of fat. So you look at even like my protein goal, I dropped down a little bit in that range, but it's just because my total caloric numbers came down. Okay, now once those were set, by the way, I didn't make any changes for the remainder of the month because I realized like it was challenging to hit those goals and I had some cravings, but because of how hungry I felt at night, I was like, I do not need to go any lower. I'm hitting my protein goal. Like, I'll be honest, there were even a couple days in this month where I was just like hungry at night, you know what I mean? So I gave myself permission to actually raise up back to 2,200 calories, which I probably did like 4-ish days in the remaining month. It was just when I felt like I'm like, give me a serving of popcorn before I go to bed so I don't freaking freak out, like that's pretty much how I felt. And like I do this a lot because like that's the feeling of hunger to me, where it's just like so anyways, I allowed myself to do that, but I was very, very, very strict to make sure I never came out of a deficit or even hit maintenance at that point, because once you're in a deficit, coming out of a deficit, it really disrupts the process. It's not just that moment. It's going to take a day or 2 days for your body to get back into the deficit. It can stall you out a lot. And this is why like a full cheat day is impossible if you're trying to diet, or even a full cheat, like a cheat meal is something that's just going to very much drastically slow you down. I don't recommend it, dude. So anyways, we have some notes that I'm gonna go over at the end of this, but I wanna show you what my results were on my weigh-ins after I was following that. So remember, this is like my baseline. Every workout that I did, which was 4 rides per week, 2 strength workouts per week, and 1 day of complete rest, every workout I did, I added back in calories to make sure I was only within 500 calories of total caloric deficit for the day. So for example, if I went on a ride and burnt 1,500 calories, I would add 1,000 calories on top of this number. And those calories need to be primarily carbohydrate. Now it's okay if these other numbers come up along with it. It's normal if you're eating whole sources of carbohydrates like pasta, like your protein is gonna come up, your fat's gonna come up a little bit, but it's also okay to eat a lot of that back in sugar because that's primarily the calories that you burnt in that exercise process. So add those calories back in and just make sure that for the day you hit your original protein number goal, and then you'll be good. The only weird thing and why this confuses people is because once they start eating past their baseline nutrition, which is this right here, it's gonna mess up your pie chart. And for me, like on a day where I don't work out, it's gonna be 45% carbohydrates, which is my 1 day per week, or excuse me, when I also do my strength training sessions. On the days I ride, my carbs are gonna be up at like 60, 65% by the end of the day. So keep that in mind. That is okay. I just made sure I hit my protein goal, and just make sure also, I mean, I do this intuitively now, but make sure that when you eat back a lot of those calories, that the majority of them aren't fat. You really don't want the majority of your calories back in fat that you burned on your ride, because you didn't primarily use fat. You primarily used carbohydrates. I haven't even experimented with what that would do because it doesn't make sense to me. And I naturally lean towards more carbs anyways. If you want to, go ahead. I don't think it's a good idea though. Just make sure primarily back in carb. It messes up your numbers, but that's okay. Now, I guess the last thing I'll note on that is on my strength training days, my strength workouts don't typically burn more than 500 calories. And for that reason, I just decided not to add any calories for those days. And it puts me in maybe a little bit of a higher deficit, especially with the residual burn you get from strength training as far as your metabolism goes. That clock, like that post-exercise caloric burn is gonna be higher for longer than just from doing a bike ride, which again, even that sticks around. It's like you do a huge ride one day, the next day you're probably gonna be a little bit more hungry. But anyways, with my strength workouts, they typically burn like 300 to 500 calories. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna use that as a day to really stick to my baseline numbers. Maybe it puts me in more of a deficit, but it could speed up the process, which it absolutely did. So that's up to you. You can add back calories on your strength workout. But if it's up to 500, that's up to you. I think once you burn more than 500 calories in a workout, you absolutely need to start adding some calories back. For example, you track a strength workout and you magically burn 800 calories, which would be a gnarly strength workout. Give yourself at least 300 extra for the day. Now, we look at my whole weight graph. September 29th, 159 pounds, 13.2% body fat. I weighed again on the InBody machine on October 8th, and I had already dropped to 153.4 and 12% body fat. Now I made a note here that this is the detox period. This was not all body fat. A lot of this actually was water weight. In fact, I think 3 pounds of it was water weight. And that's because when you start drinking more water, by the way, a gallon of water a day, people, 1 gallon of water a day. I usually drink more than that, but that would also help satiate you. The detox period is legit because you will honestly, like, the bloat goes away when you start drinking more and eating less. You start to just use the restroom more. Like, your body is going to flush out. Every single time I jump into something like this, that happens. So to notice a significant weight drop in the first week is very likely, to be honest. The only thing that would change that is if you started a strength program or a new workout program the same week you start the dieting thing, which I don't recommend. But because with your body having the tissue breakdown, from the unfamiliar exercise, your body's gonna retain more water in your muscle, and that's going to potentially stall your weight. But that's just because it's different. You need a couple weeks for your body to normalize that. I was strength training consistently, just kept it moving, weight dropped like crazy. Now, this is one of the most annoying times of this whole process. I was nailing my diet, everything was going good, but I freaking plateaued. And not only did I plateau, my weight came up by 0.5 pounds and my body fat percentage came up by 0.8. Now this was a 1 week difference right here. It's the major representation of a plateau, but the real change in body fat, because I know how my machine works for the InBody testing, it's called bioelectric impedance. It basically measures how much, it shoots an electric signal through your body, and it differentiates between water weight, fat mass, and lean body mass. Now, there's ways to cheat the system, which I won't technically tell you, but all I'll say is that, which I didn't do, by the way, because your boy's honest. I was flat this day. like literally my muscles just didn't have much water in them. I just looked flat. And this is a very common thing to happen when you're in a deficit and there's not that much glycogen in your muscles. You can just look a little like stringier than normal, which isn't great, but it's part of the process. And I think when I weighed in on this day, that was just part of the case. I just was flat. I didn't have much water in my muscles, and it showed me as a higher body fat percentage because it showed me at a lower muscle mass. So that's kind of how that works. But it's part of the plateau. And I'll tell you, these are the points where you're just like, am I doing the right thing? Is it worth it? Stay on it though. It was only a week, because the following week we came in, basically our final measurement, October 27th, I had dropped 152.1, and guess what? Boom, huge drop in the body fat, 9.6%. Now, what's cool about this is that I was actually only a half pound difference in my water weight from my initial weigh-in. And that's the best thing, is because I did not lose any muscle during this process. And I only had a half pound difference in water weight. So that entire 7 pounds that I lost was, I guess, with the exception of 0.15 whatever, or I don't know, 0.6, that'd be 0.6. With the exception of 0.6, it was all muscle. Or so it was all fat that I lost, and I retained my muscle, which is a huge accomplishment, but a testament to why you maintain your strength work and you hit your protein goal every single day. Now, I guess because I don't want to contradict myself, what I will say is that if you want to start a diet and exercise program at the same time, start with your exercise, then go to diet. That's just my opinion. You can start your diet 2 weeks later, but start moving your body. I think the impact, it depends on the person, but I think the impact of implementing the exercise, the movement, is going to have more short-term impact than the diet will. But long-term, you want both. And again, it just depends. It's like, yeah, maybe you should start with the diet if you have to lose 200 pounds and you drink a 2 liter of soda every single day. That's probably a good idea, but you can see what I'm going with this. Moving your body is a great place to start. So anyways, I dropped 7 pounds, 3.5% body fat, did not lose any muscle. One thing I had to mention was I didn't drink any alcohol for this entire month, which was a huge accomplishment for me. It was a parameter that it's pretty much necessary once you want to drop below 10%, but not required for everyone. And you can drop below 10% and drink alcohol, just very, very, very little. And really all year I was drinking, 2 to 3 drinks a night. And a lot of times it's like a seltzer or something pretty low calorie, but it causes me to eat more. And there's also some mental side to it. I was kind of drinking to compensate for some stress. And that's just not the kind of game I want to mess with. So I decided to nip that in the bud. I knew it would help support this process. And again, not missing workouts was huge. Now, notes from this experience, because this is my 3rd time doing a full-on deficit, my cravings were not as bad. Like what I've noticed every single time I go through this process, even though it's on the extreme end, it really reestablishes your baseline of eating. And every time I've come out of it, I've never gone back into a diet that was as bad as the previous one. And I think that's one thing to really note. Like, I know I'm not going to maintain all of this like forever or even the following weeks after it's done, because it is hard to get to. But I do know that every single time there's been one habit I've kind of changed or one meal I've left in that really supports me being at a lower body fat percentage and a lower weight long term. So like every time I've done like a month like this where it's super hard, I do come out of it in a way better place. And the biggest thing I noticed this time going back in was that my cravings were not as bad. I was craving some alcohol, but prior to this diet, like I would kind of binge eat dessert a lot, and I would eat every weekend I was craving dessert like crazy, and I'd be getting Reese's peanut butter cups to put in my pint of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. And leading up to this, I didn't do that stuff anymore. And when I went into the diet, the cravings weren't as bad. And that was a huge win for me, to be honest. Now, one thing I noticed with this diet was that I was getting very lethargic at night, like very lethargic, like dragging my feet around my house, almost head down lethargic. And I didn't notice that the very first time I did this dieting process or previous times, but also, even though I had one baby, I didn't have baby twins. And I'm speaking for every parent of twins out there, it's on another level. It really is. the energy it takes plus my toddler at night, it was so obvious how lethargic I was. And that was a little bit difficult to go through, but I just kind of pushed through it, to be honest. And I think my wife had to take over at some points when I was just being a little bit of a bum, which I'm never a bum, but man, I wanted to be so bad. I mean, it's so much easier to diet when you can just sit around. I can't do that anymore though. So anyways, one big thing I learned. Okay, last positive before negative. Positive. Take before and after pics. Dude, my before and after pics were really sick. Like, I was so happy I took them, and I've known that this is a huge thing because I get client transformations this way, but I've never actually taken them myself. And when I had taken them initially, I looked at the photos and I was like, oh, I don't look that bad. But when I compared my after photo, 7 less pounds, 3.5% body fat, it wasn't just the weight difference, which was very obvious. My whole demeanor was different in the photos. And I've always wondered, like, why aren't people smiling in their before photos? Why are they smiling in their after photos? It's literally, and I've experienced this, I didn't intentionally smile or not smile. I couldn't help but smile in my after photos. When I took the before photos, I wasn't smiling because I really don't think I felt happy on the inside like that. And you know what you're doing, you're proud of yourself, you want to present yourself, but also it's really crazy how your demeanor is. And just that fulfillment you get from following through on something like this, you can't help but smile at the end. It's really cool. So take before and after photos. I did them every single week, front, side, and back. You could also just do a video where you're kind of turning and stuff, but trying to get it in the same place in your house, in your gym or whatever with the same lighting. That's super important. Now, here is the one thing I blew it on that I learned from this process that I will definitely not do in the future. My end date was Halloween. Halloween in my family is one of the biggest splurge food days ever. If you saw the spread that is out at my Halloween, at my parents' house, it's unbelievable. It's chili dogs is the main meal with every candy, every chocolate, every cookie and caramel corn and donuts and all this stuff all out. And every year, my only goal is don't make yourself sick, and I've never succeeded. This year was no exception. And I was really disappointed in myself because I set my final date as Halloween. And even though I started eating a little bit more right before this for a photo shoot because, again, I didn't want to be flat, I started taking in some more calories. I was like, I allowed myself alcohol and I allowed myself to eat whatever on Halloween, and I got carried away and I literally just ate way too much dessert. I drank too much, and I was just trying to have a good time and let loose. But the problem is you kind of are pent up after doing this, and you feel like you put yourself in a position where it's going to be so hard to control yourself. And so I will never again finish a diet at an event or some kind of thing like that where I already know I'm going to be super tempted to eat way out of my norm, because it's going to be so much harder to do after a month like this. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I was so inflamed and I was so puffy after drinking and eating, just like everything. Besides having a sick stomach, I was so puffy and inflamed and just retaining water. I did get on the scale because I was like, you did the crime. You gotta figure out what your cost really is. I was up 5 pounds, and I was so bummed. I went from 152 up to 157, and I knew that it was like water and inflammation, but I had to work again the next couple of days, and I didn't have to do anything even this extreme, but like it took 3 days for my body to get back down under 155, and since then I haven't been below 154, which, to be honest, 154 is a really ideal weight for me, just maintenance wise, something I can hold on to long term. I feel great. I look the way I want to. It's not quite as lean as 152, but I'm happy with it. But again, it's like I ramped back up, I felt disappointed, and I kind of had to work a little harder to get back under or get back around my kind of goal weight. So never again will I tempt myself or put myself in that position. I think when I end a diet, I'll make sure that the first day I have a meal that's not tracked, or I have alcohol again, or I have a dessert or whatever it might be, I'm going to make sure it's just not at something so tempting. Pick a random day to end it on, go plan your own deal, make it a little bit more controlled, and hopefully you won't have to go through that disappointment of just puffing up and being an idiot. That's everything. I hope that all helps. Like I said, I have resources on the website to help you start this whole process. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you are wondering whether or not you're willing to even commit to this, you have to ask yourself, what would you pay physical cash to have the body that you want and to have the performance that you want? This is a huge part of it, and it's pretty much free. like this information right here is completely free, and your ability to act is free. You're gonna need some measuring cups, you're gonna need a food scale, you might need a scale, you might need other things, but I want you to know that there's a dollar amount you would pay to have it, and this is your answer right here. You don't have to spend any money on it like that. You can just put in the work and actually get the lasting results, because even if you were to pay for whatever operation that gets you to this goal that you want, you're never going to be able to maintain it because you didn't learn the habits, you didn't actually change your lifestyle. It is not a sexy thing to say, it is just the truth and it's reality. And I want everyone to be empowered by their control over food. And this process is without a doubt the best way to learn it. If you ask me for a meal plan, it doesn't teach you how to eat, you only know how to follow. And you don't know how to make decisions. If you're not willing to do this, I would ask yourself, if it's something you even really want results-wise. If this messes with your brain too much in the sense that you have potential eating disorder, or it brings up a lot of like personal trauma. I mean, I know how deep all things dieting go. I've had literally clients crying in my arms more than I could count on two hands because of these conversations, and not me being tough on them. It's just them breaking down in front of me. So I get it. I know how serious this is, but the alternative is seeing a nutritionist once a week for more or less a counseling session, and also not having clarity over your numbers and still kind of just trying to do things intuitively and quote unquote kind of winging it, making the best decision that you have knowledge of. But it's a long process, and I know that everyone could benefit from some variation of this. So that's it. Eat back your calories, fuel your work, and don't give me the excuse that you're not going to do this, because it's going to hurt your performance, because I've literally proven that that's not true, and I've had a lot of people in the Dialed fam do it as well. So that's it, you guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Start moving forward. I'll see you next week.